Welcome to Maxwell. You had a bit of a delay there with the meeting. I take it that you said that
Yes,
you
yeah.
had.
You call this the Strictly Healthy show. I'm on a 4-day health and well-being coaches. So, yeah, that's what I've been on.
Oh, okay, great. Well, let me just introduce you properly. So, Chukes is, I think your full name is Chukumeka, is that right?
Chukumeka.
Maxwell, yeah, and you're the founder of Action to Prevent Suicide, a community interest company, and you're raising funds for the program to prevent suicide. Is that right? Yeah. And well, just tell us a bit more about yourself and your background, etc. That's how we like to start with all of our guests.
Okay.
So if you don't mind.
So I don't know where to start, but I'll start at all sorts of places. I have a standing joke that I like.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say I have a standing joke that I like to say. Since we're on a strictly healthy show. So years ago, I started off my life in the catering business where I used to buy wine and food and travel around the world. So I was paid a lot of money to make people drink and eat well. And then I went off to be in the ambulance service many years later. And I used to pick up people and work out what was going wrong with them. And now I work as a health and well-being coach to, at one level, check out if they don't even start drinking. So I moved from a journey of what I call illness to trying to focus more on well-being. And the reason why I chose suicide prevention is because I believe life is sacred, and it's really important to try and preserve life. If where possible, doesn't mean I think taking a life by suicide is wrong. It's more about preserving life. And the antidote to that is well-being. So I'm really happy to be focused in those places.
Sure, yes. Now, you had some other jobs I noticed too. Besides, you worked in the hotel industry. You also, you're a registered social worker. You also lecture at the University of Plymouth. You had quite a few career roles, I guess. So which one of those sort of were you most proud of or interested you the most?
Well, they sometimes say pride comes before a fall, but I like to try and think about a degree of humility. But the most important change in my life was when I was a probationary Christian Buddhist monk.
Can you say that again? Your broadband seems to have
I was a
dropped
probationary Christian Buddhist monk.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting. Where did you do that? Was that in the UK then, or?
In the UK, and also I went to America. I was in America, and I was meant to go to Kathmandu, but I didn't quite make it.
Right, right. So, what is a Christian monk? Because I know that I haven't heard of a Christian monk before.
Christian Buddhist monk is the reality. The Christian Buddhist monk is the reality that the avatar, who we might know as Jesus or the Buddha or Krishna, are the same being who reincarnates in different times of human history. So in this age, that's the reincarnation, the second coming of the Christ, not the person in the White House at present. It's like working to that principle, taking the teachings of Jesus and Buddha and intersecting it into everyday life of service and earth service and supporting people towards well-being.
Okay. Well, that is something that I had not heard about. So that's okay. There's lots that I haven't heard about. But let me just get into the aspect about what you're doing now with the suicide prevention. Can you just share a little bit about that then? What piqued your interest in getting involved? Was that a personal thing that happened within your family or with with yourself, issues with yourself, or?
So I think suicide I think suicide is an and. So all those three things you mentioned have impacted on me. I have been impacted through personal, family, and friends. When I was in the ambulance service, I used to have to go along, unfortunately, and pick up body parts after someone had been hit by a train. I'd also have to see people who'd been bereaved by suicide or attempted to take their life by suicide. I became a trainer in suicide prevention courses. And I realize, again, like I said to you, that life is sacred, and up to 1 million people a year die by suicide, which is 1 every 40 seconds. It's not the biggest killer in our lives, and I'll come to that a bit later, but it's a really important aspect of one's life. So for me, focusing on suicide prevention enables me to have much more courageous conversations with people around mental health, well-being, illness, and what life is about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, it sounds like you've been through quite a few dramas, etc., especially seeing, like you say, certain people, body parts and that sort of thing. That must have been very traumatic for you.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. So how then did you get established in your CIC, your charity?
So
it's a
what
charity.
happened was CIC and a charity. So what happened was about 2015, I was sent away to become a suicide prevention trainer, which is something called ASSIST, Applies Suicide Skills Intervention Training. I went to Brighton and did a 5-day immersive course, having done the course the week before. And it was the most intense reality of my life for a very long time, because you can see I've had quite an eclectic life of work, and yet the suicide prevention course rocked me to my feet and to my heart. And it was, when I finished that course, I was so tired. But what it made me to realize is that this was a issue that affects quite a lot of humanity, because they say at any one time, 1 in 20 people on the whole planet are walking around with suicidal thoughts. They also say that every 40 seconds, someone's dying by suicide. So that's a lot. And so after qualifying to become a trainer, which we run these 2-day training courses, I then paid for myself to go to America, because the organization that supplied us with the courses was called Living Works. And I went to this Living Works conference in Atlanta, Georgia, where they just won seats. And from there, I met trainers from across the world and realized the scale of the issue. And so when I came back to England, I decided to try and change my organization's name to Suicide Safer Communities. And the Suicide Safer Community is any environment where we have a lot of people, where we can create better mental health support and suicide prevention awareness and support. Because 2/3 of people that take their life aren't known to any health professional. So this is a community public health issue.
They aren't known.
So they're not known to their doctor or GP or anybody.
So people aren't aware that you have those thoughts. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry?
People aren't aware that there are those thoughts that...
Yeah, people aren't aware of that. But also, I'm talking about people who have died by suicide. When they look retrospectively, those 75% of those people never had any connection to any medical service or anybody from the health professional. So that means that out of those 1 in 20 who are walking around with their suicidal thoughts, if they do take their life by suicide, mostly they've never been known to a mental health or a health professional. So,
so that brings me to... Sorry, carry on.
That's fine.
Well, that brings me to the thought then that what precedes their thoughts? What causes a person to go down that route? What would you say is the beginning of it? Is it financial, emotional, mental? What do you think is the
all of it?
Start?
The thing about suicide prevention, I could talk to you about any one cause or factor. It's both complex and simple. So I might be going through a rough time with my money. Doesn't mean I'm going to take my life, but it might mean I might take my life because I might have lost a lot of money, etc. I might have been divorced. It's my perception of what that situation, which is normally about loss, or you could see it as change, and my attitude towards that and how it makes me feel. And most people who take their life by suicide don't want to die. They want their pain and their immediate perception of whatever issue they're dealing with to end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a hard thing then to sort of preempt that, if you like, you know, to get ahead of that, what people are thoughts are, because sometimes it's quite a quick thing, isn't it? And other times it's been a long time they're thinking of this process, and it just seems like it's not getting any better. You know, and so what do your programs offer then?
So we offer training courses for you to become aware and spot the signs when people could be at distress of wanting to take their own life, or they could be thinking of it, and have you noticed? So we train people to be observant, to use their senses, to use their intuition. And this is not a one cap fits all. However, I feel that as human beings, we have this innately in us. So we just want to bring that out more through these suicide prevention courses. But then beyond that, we want there to be enough people in a local community to have the ability to respond, responsibility to the situation.
So, I mean, what are some of the things that you would give us as signs? What would be some of your training course? What would be involved in your training course?
Well, there are different courses. We have briefings, we do talks, we raise awareness about the scale of the problem, how much it costs, the financial, emotional cost that it affects people, what we can do, the services that are around to help, how we as an individual are part of those services. It gives people the confidence to address it rather than run away from it. It also gives people the confidence to understand that the word suicide is important to clarify clearly what is the issue. It also highlights and gives people the understanding that up until 1961, suicide was an illegal act in this country. So there's a tremendous amount of stigma and taboo for people to talk about it. So they might say, you're not going to do something silly, are you? Or you're not going to use the S word, are you? It doesn't clearly state. So it's really important when we're working in suicide prevention, we have the ability to be really clear about what we mean. So that we can then address the issue. And the more people that can do that, the more the community becomes a place of safety.
Right. Okay. Are you able to give us like some kind of a case study just so that we understand a little bit better? Maybe just one point about what we can figure out as to what precedes a person having those types of thoughts, or how can we recognize that
it's so unique. If I, for instance, know you as a bubbly person, and then you become quiet, withdrawn, almost very orderly, putting all your affairs in order, I could say to you, sometimes, Linda, when people are feeling withdrawn, you don't look your normal self, Linda, what's going on with you? And you go, I'm fine. And then I might say, but Linda, you know, yeah, it's more than the COVID. It's more than all of this. Sometimes when people are going through blah, 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 they're thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide? And so you can't, you could go no, and I might go, I'm not really quite sure. Can you really say that? Look me straight in the eye and tell me you're not. And I'm not putting the idea into their head, because if the idea is in your head, you might be so relieved that I've actually noticed. Yeah. Right. So it's giving you the confidence to follow your intuition and ask the person about whether they are thinking of suicide, not acting on it, thinking. Because what you're trying to do is stop them from acting on it.
So you really advocate mentioning the word suicide to people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really important to talk about it.
And people are not happy, but they're more relieved to hear you mention it, and also to show some interest in them.
Yeah, because it shows connection. Think about it. When you want to take your life by suicide, there's 7 billion people plus on this planet. You feel so alone that you think you have no other point but wanting to take your life. So if one person can just be there for you, that's incredible. So it's about connection.
Sure. I can appreciate that. Yeah, it seems like a very sad, dark place that a person must get to come to a point.
But it's also a really joyful place that they want to live.
Yeah. I think most people can't tell you when they would want to die, can they?
No.
Unless they're in tremendous pain, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
Even then,
and that could be an emotional pain.
Yeah, and that happens a lot too.
Yep.
Indeed, yeah. So I know we've gone through or are going through very rough times at the moment. Have you? I would take it that you have heard of or seen some increase in people committing suicide.
Personally, I haven't, but I have also had a steady stream of people. I think it's really important, even though I'm doing what I'm doing, that we don't overestimate or catastrophize more. So, for instance, we'll always say, oh, the mental health situations are getting a lot worse. And when you actually check out, they may not be. For some people, they might be going, oh, thank God I don't have to go to work the same way. Thank God I'm not doing that job anymore. I'm not saying we shouldn't care about people. What I'm saying is life is tough, always. The original Buddha said, life is suffering. But these are the ways I can help you get through that.
Yeah,
so it's really, really important for our attitude to recognize that and watch the stories we tell ourselves or we tell about other people without really knowing. And again, suicide prevention gives me the opportunity not to know what's going on for that person, but I'm expecting the person to tell
me. Okay. So, I mean, just thinking of the average person now, and, maybe we have gone through a rough time. That has happened. Some people have taken it differently, as you say, and they're thinking positive. They're not even, they've had some relief, like for instance, we've managed to pay off quite a few of our debts. So that's been a great thing. So this hasn't been too bad of an impact on us. But when I say us, I'm talking about hubby and I. But how can you maybe help people to just have some positive attitude towards what's been going on and not go down that route?
Well, if a person comes forward in my day job or even in suicide prevention asking for help, that's a good sign. Yeah. If they're picked up the phone, even if they're desperate, that's a good sign. When I'm taken to places and people start talking to me, that's a good sign. So I can't give you any prescriptive reality. All I know is I have the ability to respond and think people come towards me, or I'm asked to work with people, and out of that is what people will tell me. And I think that's positive because then we can deal with it because we're not having the taboo in the room and hiding behind things. We bring it, we shine a light, and then we use the light to dissipate the negativity.
Okay, good. Well, you have a bit of a fan, I must say, Chukes. When I interviewed you on my radio program last year, one of the audience members, she was quite taken by your comments, your philosophy, etc. So I've asked her to join us today to answer this question. Me. I'm surprising you, so hope you don't mind. I've had her as a guest on before as well.
Nice.
To Patricia Bowman. I'll add her to the stream now, so just bear with me while I do that. Patricia, you're there, I believe.
I think I am.
There she is. So, Chukes, this is Patricia Bowman. She's one of your fans, and I can say that cheekily. I'm sure she won't mind me saying that. So Patricia has a couple questions for you, I believe.
Cool.
Oh, hi, Chukes. Hi.
Go ahead.
Very nice to meet you. And being the health revolution activist, I work with people with a lot of problems, mostly physical, but sometimes the physical can impact the mental. And one question I have is, many causes for depression, and thankfully a lot of it's coming out now in the last couple of years. But would you say suicidal thoughts are caused by depression?
It's more simplistic and more complex than that. because where I hear a lovely accent there. Where are you from?
Oh, originally California.
Which part?
Hollywood, actually.
Okay. I love California. Northern California is my favorite place on the planet. Anyway, that's another story. In some cultures, there is no word for depression.
Interesting.
Yeah, so because one of my roles as well, I used to be a health and a community development worker working with what was called delivering race equality in mental health services. So if you imagine from your country, when you think about the Native Americans and all the land they've lost and the way we've treated them over the lifetime, which came first, the season of the land or the depression, or the reality that they've taken away their spiritual connection and they're drinking too much and everything else, which then could create suicidal behaviors, which then create active perpetuation towards suicide. So I had a lovely conversation with a friend of mine yesterday in Ireland, and he says a lot of our behaviors are passive suicidal behaviors or passive suicide, because on the planet, 17 million people a year die by heart disease. That's a lot of people. 1 million people die by suicide, but suicide has a bit like this much more stigma, painful reality than all the people. And now we're in a pandemic, killing a lot of people, but yet we're talking as well now about suicide. So, I mean, for me, depression at one level is a natural state of frustration with how things are, but also sometimes how things, they say in some cultures, if you live in the past, you're going to get depressed. If you live in the future, you're going to get anxious. So stay in the present. So for me, I have to meditate. I have to pray. I have to understand. And I love that lovely chap from Canada, I think he was originally, I presume he was, Stephen Covey, who talks about seek first to understand, then be understood. So with everybody, everyone's so beautifully unique. Their perception of their suffering, which I believe there's no hierarchy in suffering, but their perception of suffering could be a causal factor as to what we would call depression or suicide ideation.
Sometimes unmet expectations.
Yeah.
Sometimes
or a bigger way of saying it is unrequited love.
Yes. I like what you said. I'm just trying to recall your words, but it was well, so many things really spoke to me. One is just getting someone to acknowledge, because they don't want to die. They just want the pain to go away.
Absolutely.
So connecting with even one person who they felt safe, that acknowledged it, wasn't going to cart them off to exactly. Hospital, but just understood is enough.
A lot of people who've tried to take their life really acknowledge people who can be there with their suffering. In the part of the world near where you come from, even though it's much further north, Golden Gate Bridge, there's a famous chap who got on the bus to go to the Golden Gate Bridge to kill himself. And as he was going, he was crying, and people were just not paying attention to him. And he said if one person had stopped and asked him, he was crying his eyes out, what he was doing, that would have stopped him from trying to jump. Anyway, the only person that stopped him was a lady who said, can you take my picture on the iPad? He took her picture, handed the iPad back, went to the Golden Gate Bridge, stood on the edge and jumped. The moment he jumped, he knew he didn't want to die. So he hit the water at about 70 miles per hour, shattered his legs, but went down to the bottom, and he was like, and he swam and he swam and he swam. And then I think it's a sea lion, which normally eats people, pushed him up to the top. So he goes around the world now talking about this, and he's got a film I call The Ripple Effect, and he really wants people to understand, because again, when suicides happen, the research says up to 133 people are affected for each suicide, and the financial cost of a suicide in this country has been put at £1.7 million for a completed suicide. That's because of all the people it affects, the ripple effect. So, for instance, the people who jumped in front of a train, the train driver's going to retire, they're going to pay out his money on insurance. All the people who have been late for work, missing their airplanes, that's why you get that total figure.
I want to thank you, Patricia, for joining us now. We gotta wrap up in a second. So thank you, but we'll have you join another time.
Where's Patricia based?
Thank you, Patricia. She's based actually in Somerset. So okay. I've chatted with Patricia a few times, and yes, very smart lady, switched on lady. So I will connect you two as well, so that we can further the conversation. And I think what we might need to do is probably have you on again, because there's so many other questions that I want to ask. One of them, how do you help those that are impacted by it? So somebody has died in their family or associates or whatever. Does your charity help those ones who have been impacted?
So our charity is
suicide?
We've recently formed a charity, and what we're looking to do is buy a farm in Devon where people can come and stay who've been bereaved by suicide, or also people who are feeling suicidal can come. The other point is that when people have been bereaved by suicide, they are at risk of taking their own life by suicide. So again, we're working with a collaboration of people who work in this field, who are both specialists and also people who are wanting to help. So we get this message across, so we can support people who've been bereaved by suicide, so they can feel safe.
Sure. Okay, good. Well, I want to thank you, Chukes, for joining me here now. But obviously, loads more questions, and we could get a lot more involved in it. But that's our time. We'll try to keep it to a certain limit. But certainly, thank you for joining today. I think it was absolutely fantastic, the information that you shared with us.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Very pleased that you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.